Did Doug Ford just threaten war with the United States over Donald Trump's new tariffs? Well, not exactly, but what he's proposing could backfire in a very big way and leave Canada paying the price for years to come. There's one striking connection between the current trade dispute with the United States and the COVID-19 pandemic that will completely change how you view the way that our politicians are handling this issue. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And be sure to watch until the end, because Mark Carney was caught misleading Canadians about something pretty significant. And honestly, if Pierre Poilievre had done the same thing, the media would be calling for his resignation. Which begs the question, why is no one calling for Mark Carney to resign? I'm Elie Cantin-Nantel. Welcome back to the podcast. Before we get started, be sure you're subscribed. Did you know that up to 80% of my viewers are not subscribed to the channel? So hit that button. I'm trying to get to 25,000 subscribers. Be sure to like and hype the video, hit the notification bell, and consider getting a paid channel membership or making a donation, because unlike the legacy media, we take zero money from the government and we never will.
Journalism and commentary 1 year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government
You
is the
have to rebuild
solution.
the foundation. You have to retell the stories.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged with.
We begin today with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is threatening to cut off electricity to the Americans in response to Donald Trump threatening 50% tariffs by next month if Canada doesn't do, among other things, remove the alcohol bans that were spearheaded by Doug Ford. So here's Doug Ford talking about that.
Hey, Doug, you mentioned that all options are on the table regarding leverage with the U.S. Does that include Ontario cutting off electricity exports to the U.S. or bringing back a surcharge for electricity exports?
Everything's on the table.
Can you maybe elaborate on that? What would it take for you to do that? I know you said you don't speak for other premiers, but you've mentioned oil and potash. Are you hoping that the federal government leads a coordinated approach where every province puts something on the table to leverage against the U.S.?
Oh, that can only be done if the rest of the province, it's a Team Canada approach, and we're going to take the Prime Minister's lead. So I look forward to hearing what he has to say.
The first thing that came to mind when I saw this was the following question: is this an act of war? You would literally be depriving American citizens, businesses, of electricity. Now, I looked this up and no, it's not actually an act of war. Now, if the Canada attacked US power plants, for example, then yeah, that would be an act of war. So it wouldn't be an act of war, but it would be a very, very aggressive decision to cut off electricity to our greatest ally neighbor, something that, by the way, he's threatened to do before. And last time he tried to threaten to do this and impose a surcharge, it didn't go over very well. It resulted in this following post. Based on Ontario, Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I've instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% to 50% tariff on steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada, one of the highest tariffing nations anywhere in the world. This will go into effect tomorrow morning, March 12th. Also, Canada must immediately drop their anti-American farmer tariff of 250 to 390% on various U.S. dairy products, which has long been considered outrageous. I will shortly be declaring a national emergency on electricity within the threatened areas. This will allow the U.S. to quickly do what has to be done to alleviate this abusive threat to Canada. So the last time that we tried this whole, we're going to do something about your electricity, America, it resulted in more threats of tariffs. So if we're already facing 50% tariffs, God knows what we will be facing if Doug Ford actually wanted to go ahead with it. And it's interesting to note that last March when he did this, well, he was forced to back down. Check out this headline from March from the CBC. Ontario suspends levy on US-bound electricity as Ford set to meet with Trump official. So it didn't work last time. So why should we think that it's going to work this time? Hint, it will not. Threatening the US by cutting off electricity will lead to nowhere good or productive. Furthermore, what's interesting is when Israel cut off electricity to Gaza, this was called cruel and unlawful. But when Doug Ford threatens to cut off electricity to the US, it's apparently stunning and brave, even though it leads to nothing productive, and even though he ends up backing off at the end of the day. This wasn't the only threat that Doug Ford made to the US. Doug Ford claimed that Canada could dismantle the US if it wanted to, and said that Americans need to feel pain.
What I understand is 28 billion across the country. Majority is going to be here in Ontario. That's why we can't roll over. We have to hit back. We have to, rather than be on our back heel, as I said, we have to go forward, take the offense. We are an energy powerhouse, and we could dismantle the U.S. if we wanted to, if we all work together. No matter if it's the electricity, and I'm not speaking for the other provinces, I'm going to be very clear. The potash, the oil, we're their number one customer in the world. They need to feel the pain rather than us constantly feeling the pain.
The US economy is 12 to 13 times bigger than the Canadian economy, and Canada is now poorer than Alabama. So good luck with that, Doug. But also, he's been saying the whole thing about making feel the pain for 2 years, and where's that gotten us? Again, the initial tariffs were 25%. We've been making them feel the pain for 2 years, and now we're facing 50% tariffs. The measures taken on by the Canadians, whether it's the Doug Ford electricity threat, whether it's the alcohol ban, have only escalated the situation. Here is Jameson Greer, the US Trade Ambassador, talking about how Canada's actions have been irritants.
Canada has had its retaliatory measures. In place on us for at least a year. Things like dairy have been discriminatory against the United States for even longer than that. So we have been considering, very tailored action to respond to those things, which we've done. So we have 3 separate actions: one for the hard cap that they've put on some of our cars, or the quotas and the system they put on our cars; the total ban they've put some of the provinces, many of the provinces, on alcohol, liquor, and that kind of thing, and then of course the last one, the dairy, where they give the Europeans a better deal than we do. So this is something that's been in preparation for some time. We have tried for over a year to get the Canadians to eliminate these things. Again, we've given them the best treatment available in the world in the past year or so, and despite that, they've still taken these actions. So we thought it was necessary to elevate this.
Currently, Canada enjoys 85% of its trade being tariff-free with the US, which is a pretty good deal. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And what has Canada done in response? They've banned US alcohol, and our politicians have told Canadians, don't go to the United States. Canada has pursued a strategic partnership with communist China. Canada's said that Europe is the future. They're doing everything possible to alienate the Americans, despite us having gotten better treatment than a lot of the other countries, because we are number one allies with America. From that clip, it's clear the Americans want to deal with Canada. That is exactly what I heard last week. I spent an entire week in Washington, D.C. I met with some of the top Republicans in Congress. I spoke with some of the top insiders in Washington. Not a single person told me we don't want to deal with Canada. Not a single person told me we want to invade Canada. They want a deal, but Canada doesn't seem interested in pursuing a deal. Instead, we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And when did we last see this? Oh, right, COVID. So take a look at this tweet from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. It reads, if these tariffs proceed, Canada should respond tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. This is something that we have heard for the last 2 years, and that is the mentality, the approach that we have had for the last 2 years. This tweet is not from 2024 or 2025. This is from 2026. Exact same approach that has failed, and we're doing it again. This is during COVID. Check out this headline. Ontario moves school online, closes indoor dining and gyms as part of sweeping new COVID-19 measures. Now, reading that text, it sounds like something from March 2020, from the start of COVID. But no, this is from January 2022, after everybody had been vaccinated, after 2 years of science, of evidence showing that the lockdowns, the masks, the mandates didn't work. They were still doing the same thing again. And this is why I say that this so-called trade war is the new COVID. Just like in COVID, we're seeing mass formation psychosis. We're seeing Canadians be propagandized into fear. We're seeing the government take extraordinary measures where they are not respecting the democratic will of people. They're not letting people choose things for themselves. No, we're not going to let you choose to boycott American alcohol. We're going to force you not to buy American alcohol in a Soviet way. We, the government, know what's best. We're going to shame you if you go to the US, just like we were going to shame you if you hung out with friends during the pandemic. We're going to have everybody glued to their screens. We're going to have one narrative, no criticism of the government. We're going to try to use this to stay in power longer. We're going to try to use this crisis and turn it into a political opportunities to frame ourselves as the saviors, the politicians. This is exactly what we saw during COVID. And just like during COVID, Canadians are going along with it, which is a problem with Canada itself. Canadians are some of the most propagandized people on the planet. Canadians were wearing 2-3 masks after having 2-3 vaccines, which doesn't make any sense. And now Canadians are viewing the US as an enemy and China as a friend. Check out this clip from CNN. This is incredible. It shows you that propaganda is effective.
How Canadians view the United States, a threat or cautiously. In 2024, it was just 26%. Ally or friend, 73%. Now these numbers, inverse, flip around the rosy. Look at this. Okay, now 74%. Look at that, up nearly 50 points. Now Canadians say that the U.S. should be viewed as a threat or cautiously. The ally or friend, down through the floor, down the St. Lawrence River. Now just 22% of Canadians say they should view the United States as an ally or a friend. That is down, what is that, 51 points. Canadians not liking the way things are going under the administration of Donald John Trump.
Well, I just want to say that I'm a proud 22% who still views America as an ally, and I hope you are too. This is absolutely ridiculous. So I posted this on X, and I said, this is propaganda in action. And some people said, well, no, people have the right not to like Trump. Okay, here's what I have to say to this. There's a difference between the country, its people, and the leader. You can not like Donald Trump. You know what? That's okay. You don't have to like Donald Trump. But to view the U.S., the country that is responsible for our security, the country that is our greatest ally, friend, we're so lucky to be neighbors to the U.S. I would not trade the U.S. for anyone else. We are very, very blessed to have this incredible country as our neighbor. But Canadians increasingly don't view that to be the case because 85% of our trade is tariff-free rather than 100%, even though it was never 100% tariff-free, and Canada's imposed tariffs on American products, and Canada has relied on the US's military for protection. And now we're going to view them as the enemy, and we're going to embrace communist China, and we're going to make it easier for Canadians to visit China, and we're going to buy Chinese electric vehicles that are spyware on wheels to own the Americans. Give me a break. This is all so ridiculous. And this is why my message to Canadians is to wake up and realize you are being manipulated by political actors, by lobbyists, by globalists and elitists who do not have your best interest in mind. They want power, they want money, and we as the people, we have to just say no. Just say no to the circus of the Federation and say yes to making a deal with the United States that can put all of this uncertainty to rest and resume the Canada-US relationship, the most important relationship in the world. I cannot stress this more. This is the most important relationship in the world. Yes, Donald Trump hasn't been perfect. Yes, he has done things that are irritating, but Canada has also done things that are irritating. The best way forward is to get a deal. The Americans want a deal. Again, you can take it from me. I spent a week with some of the top Washington insiders, some of the top Republicans in Washington. None of them told me they didn't want a deal. America wants a deal, and it's time for Canada to do its part. Only Canada and China did elbows up. The rest of the world went to do deals. It's time for us to get a deal as well. Now to today's other big story. Mark Carney was caught misleading Canadians. So let's take a look at this piece from Juno News, an outlet that I love, and I encourage you to go and check out if you don't already. So let's read this together. Secret Gordie Howe Bridge deal reveals Carney misled Canadians. The Gordie Howe Bridge deal is now public and confirms that the Prime Minister misled Canadians. Canada will send the US 50% of the bridge's net revenue after operating costs, but before Canada's debt payment for 15 years into a fund controlled exclusively by the US government, despite Canada covering the bridge's $6.4 billion construction costs, and while the US and Michigan contributed nothing. Wow, Mark Carney knows how to do the art of the deal, guys. The agreement also gives Washington veto power over annual toll hikes above 10% or rates outside comparable regional crossing, or potentially benefiting the Trump-linked owners at the Ambassador Bridge. Again, terrific deal-making by Mark Carney. The deal comes a day after Prime Minister Mark Carney walked away from reporters without answering questions about whether he had misled Canadians over the undisclosed concession. The interaction went as the following. He was asked, "Did you mislead Canadians on the bridge?" And Carney abruptly ended the media availability and walked away. Wow. Talk about accountability there. Canadians really are bipolar. It's either they attack the US very irrationally or they just give in to all their demands. Like, what the heck is this negotiation? This is malpractice. You know, what we need to do is make a deal where things make sense. Carney's doing neither. He's just going offense and caving. Offense and caving. How does that show that we're a serious partner? Hint, we're not, because unfortunately, after 10 years of the Liberals, Canada has stopped being a serious country. I've been saying this for years. It pains me to say it. We are not a serious country. So here's the Conservatives' reaction.
As we now have learned the details of the Gordie Howe International Bridge late last night, we've discovered that not only has the Prime Minister caved, Liberals have indeed lied. Tragically, they had said that there was no concessions that Canada should be concerned about. The Prime Minister had made the case that he made a good deal for Canada. He had said that there would be a sharing of revenue after net debt. Instead, we have seen something very different. We've seen the admission that this has not been the deal that was promised, that indeed Canada would not be paid back until after 15 years of shared revenue, that the Americans would hold a license on the kind of pricing that would be set by the toll. And it's really part of a wider string of concessions and obfuscation. It was tragic that it had to come under Conservative pressure for so long to get clear answers after weeks of chasing the facts. It's sad that we had to threaten a parliamentary committee to expose the details of this, but thanks to the work of the press and the opposition, we now have facts for Canadian taxpayers for a $6.4 billion expenditure of a bridge they built, of a bridge they paid for.
I mean, it's pretty incredible stuff, if you ask me. And this guy was supposed to be the savior. We have to re-elect the people who destroyed the country to save the country, because that apparently makes a lot of sense. And now we're almost at 2 years of Mark Carney. There's no deal, but there's capitulation, and we're facing even higher tariffs. And that is why I tweeted out, just imagine if Pierre Poilievre had botched the Canada-US relationship the way that Mark Carney has. There would be calls for his resignation. I genuinely think there would be. But there aren't for Mark Carney, and we're not going to see any for Mark Carney, because it's all part of the plan. You see, Mark Carney was elected to get a deal with the US, but he doesn't want a deal with the US. Brian Lilley, one of the most respected journalists in the country. Here's Brian Lilley talking about why Carney doesn't want a deal.
I'd love to know what Mark Carney considers a detailed proposal, because what the Americans are saying is, you just keep offering more talks. You just keep saying, let's talk some more. And what they want are fixes and resolutions. I think that's partly why these new tariffs have been brought in. Carney is doing everything he can to get in the way of getting a trade deal done. Donald Trump started this. It is a simple matter of fact that Carney keeps getting in the way of finding a deal on trade, whether it is just not engaging, because they're not. Carney said, we have put forward several proposals, detailed proposals. And you talk to the Americans and they say, all we keep getting are letters saying, let's have discussions about the stuff that we discussed already, but discuss it some more. But Mark Carney doesn't want a deal because fighting with Donald Trump is too politically valuable for him. It's too politically valuable for Doug Ford, for David Eby. They enjoy it. They know that there is a large section of the Canadian population, and it's spread right across this country. It's all the people that voted for Mark Carney that are excited about him, that think he's great. His approvals rating hasn't been higher. They all love him fighting with Donald Trump. Most of them retired. And so losing your job at the local plant because trade with the U.S. is drying up doesn't affect them. They're living off their retirement savings, which is heavily invested in the S&P 500 in New York.
And that sums up today's show. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, and consider making a donation or becoming a paid channel member, because we don't take a dime from the government, but we do have a lot of expenses. I will be going to the United States a lot more this fall, because I'm on a mission to save the Canada-US relationship. It's the most important relationship in the world. And we cannot let Mark Carney, Doug Ford, David Eby, Wab Kinew, and the other premiers destroy that relationship for political gain. So if you agree with me, consider making a donation. And otherwise, just sharing this video, liking this video, watching the video also goes a long way. So thank you very much, and God bless.